What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. And yourself?
Good, good. Good to see you, man. Good to catch up. It'll be nice catching up with you again.
It's been a fucking minute. I think like 2 years.
Yeah, at least because I know I was talking to Ken. We hadn't done our show in 2 years with me and Ken. So yeah, this will be cool. How's the pup doing? How's the doggy?
Oh, the doggies are good. I actually got a new one. This guy. I don't know if you saw him before.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. So Poe had some depression issues about a year ago after Pauline died,
Mm,
because he was her pup, and so he wasn't eating. I brought him to the vet, had blood work done, etc. And they wanted to put him on fucking Prozac, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna put a dog on Prozac.
damn.
So then I started looking at other options, and long story short, ended up adopting this little guy out of East LA. He grew up in a kill shelter, so he was a challenge.
Mm,
He's a special pup.
I like that. I like that. But
I
once
call
y'all work through everything, he'll appreciate you even more, man. You know what I mean?
And then this
Very-
this guy,
Yeah.
as you can see, they love to play together, which is
Hmm.
made Poe a puppy again, which is great. So,
Exactly.
um,
Yeah, we have a real old one and we got our younger one, like just like that, to kind of help guide the older ones. I think that's key when you get the older dogs.
yeah, especially as they get up in age, it gives them something to do, and keeps them young at heart. So,
Yes, sir.
agreed 100%. Well, listen, the audience really doesn't know who you are, so I would love you to introduce yourself and give us
Yeah.
your backstory and tell us how you ended up getting here.
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all for having me. I mean, I think my journey with as far as Instagram and all that started, right around 2017. Um, and I'm Marco, Marco. I'm a natural farmer. As it pertains to this, by day, I build high-rise buildings, huge commercial construction projects. But I've always told everybody you got to have that parallel passion. So as long as I've been building those buildings, 20 something years, I've been growing my plants on the side and building my soils. And so that's that parallel passion. So for me, I consider myself a natural farmer. That means I like to grow my plants, using natural methods. Um, I my I guess if we're gonna break it all the way down, I guess there are some people that never, heard of me or met me. And so I mean, just to give you a little background, I really enjoy growing cannabis. It's like my passion. I love growing food too. I have a little small urban farm that we bought back in 2019 as a kind of an income property. And I've just taken that land and taken that as my project to kind of develop this land and revitalize it and make it like a little bit of an urban oasis, if you will, in this little city I'm in. And I started growing cannabis, first time just in college. I met my college roommate at the time, guy from Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach, if you think about Virginia Beach has always been a little bit more, seems like ahead of the game in cannabis. They're kind of like our, they're the beach, so they got a lot going on. So I met this guy, ended up being my roommate, and he turned me on to like high grade cannabis. Like before I met him, I knew that there was good, you get some batches that are good, you get some stuff that's bad, most of it's still brick, but some of it'll be nice and bright and some of it will taste good. But before I met him, I didn't realize there was really that levels and grades of cannabis. And so we hit it off really good, and had a bag of at the time we called it kind bud, KB. Is everything that was good, it was kind of, we just called it KB, like, and here he had like 6 seeds. He found like 6 seeds in this little half ounce. And so we said, well, let's plant these seeds. So did a quote unquote guerrilla grow, basically two kids in college. And we said, let's go out on a hillside or side of a mountain. We knew that where the sun was, so we knew which side to plant on, kind of that south, southwest corner or whatever. So we planted these 6 seeds up in the hill and drew a little hand sketch map on a piece of paper and then just left. And at the end of the school year, the end of the summer, we just said, all right, let's go up there and see what we got. So we went up there, couldn't really find the plants at first, and then we found one, but then we couldn't find any others. Well, it turned out like three had died, so our map kind of started in the middle. So we ended up finding two plants that actually grew out from these seeds we planted. Didn't even start the plants, just put seeds out. Two plants grew out. They were about this tall each. They each had about a bud about the size of your thumb. But they created a bud, you know what I'm saying? So at this, we went up there and we harvested these two little plants, and we each smoked a little bud, and that was my first time growing cannabis, right? And so that wasn't much, but then from there, I grew off and on, you know. From there, I kind of wanted to set up in a closet in college. So I set up a little, 4 foot shop lights in a little closet. So, oh yeah, I can grow this. They grew outside, so we'll just throw them in some dirt in here in this closet. Well, grew plants. I didn't know if they're male or female. Didn't really know that even that much of the game at the time. But we grew plants and we grew leaves, and we took those leaves and we would sprinkle those leaves in our cannabis to stretch it out. You know what I'm saying? So we kind of stretched out our cannabis. Being college kids, didn't have a lot of money anyway. But so did a little closet thing for a little bit, and then just kind of got leaves. Didn't really get anything. But then from there, I was really intrigued, and I wanted to do it better. I was like, okay, people are growing indoors. How are they doing? So I just got into it more late, and then just started reading more. Didn't grow straight, and that was around 97 or 96 when we put those two plants out. It didn't grow continuously until about kind of was off and on, but then around 2001, I got really serious and kind of really pushed and focused on growing steadily from there on out. Started out with soil, just pots again. I got the cannabis grow Bible along the way. Greg Green, that
Mhm.
was a huge step for me to really learn a lot about cannabis and getting deeper into it. But so yeah, and then from there I kind of went soil, learned hydro, went hydro, got really good at that, then went back to soil, super soil. Understanding the value of microbes really started kicking in around that time, and kind of transition from super soil to like a living soil, and then now I've grown through living soil, and now I'm on horizontal living soil, and I owe that to you because one day and I'm sorry to go long winded, but I just want to get to the
No,
bottom.
let's see. We got time, bro. We got time.
So yeah, we're on horizontal living soil now, right? And I'm really set on that. I love it. Like one evening I was sitting around just watching YouTube doing research, and I saw a video. You, Peter, and I forget the other guy's name. What's his name?
Oh God, that's been a minute.
Right.
No, I can't remember it.
All right. So you'll think of it, but it was you three. You guys were out in somebody's backyard out in Cali, and you were working on these horizontal soil, right? And you were building his horizons, and that really hit with me. I was like, oh shit, horizon. I was like, man, I like that. I love that. The sand filter was a thing that really locked in on me because growing enough plants and growing with soil, you realize when I water, that leachate that runs out, you look at it, it's like brown, it's loaded with goodness, like it's got all kinds of good material in it as well, and you don't want to lose that. So that sand filter layer really registered with me that, all right, now I'm going to water, and then now that sand filter layer is going to capture all my organic particles, and now those will suspend in there in that sand, and that'll become an area of very rich zone for very rich growth from the plants. And so that was my trigger to the horizontal, man. So that's where I'm at, Leighton, and I've been running the horizontal for like a little over 2 years now, man. And I've changed all my beds to it. I got like 6 beds; they're all horizontal now, and I've just been flipping and flipping and learning more, more and more along the way.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. And watering is a lot easier, isn't it?
Oh yeah, watering is so much easier, man. And like, and the other thing is with the big beds, it like that. It seems like you hold moisture more evenly throughout, right? And I think that's got to do with that sand and that wicking action. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit more, about it while we're talking, like the importance of that sand filter layer. Why that's seems so key.
Well, it goes back to well, I got thrown into this world of soil engineering. I didn't have a choice. It was sink or swim. It was on these, multi-million dollar landscape projects, 800 plus thousands dollars of plant material. And that's a big responsibility. You start killing shit. And then worse yet, the landscape architects were totally inappropriate planting. So there's a thing called topiary. It's basically making statues with plants and then trimming the plants and maintaining this appearance. In this particular one job, the landscape architect had purchased these swamp maples, which are beautiful. They turn this gorgeous red in the fall. And then they'd surrounded it right tight to the trunk in a series of English box or European boxwoods. So the boxwoods like their feet dry. And of course, the swamp maple wants its feet soaking wet. And of course, they put it on the same damn irrigation system. I'm like, no, no, no. You got to at least give me 2 different zones. And they're like, we already have 300 zones, Leighton. We're not adding fucking another 300 zones. So I'm like, oh, okay, motherfucker. how am I gonna figure this shit out, right?
Right.
So that's when I started playing with different blends of sand, silt, clay, and organic matter to figure out what holds water, what releases water, what suspends water, and that's where the sand came into play. And a great experiment that people can do at home that's always blows my mind even to this day is you take a bucket, 5-gallon bucket, fill it like 2/3 with sand, coarse sand, and then take a gallon of water. Use the gallon jug as a unit of measurement, and start pouring the water into that bucket till the water gets to the surface of the sand. Now, take that bucket, and put it on a tarp, flip it upside down like you're making a sand castle, and watch how long it takes to dry out.
Mm.
That's the thing that it just blows your mind is the water storage capacity that sand actually can hold. Um, it's a really cool experiment, and I encourage hey, do a YouTube post on it. I mean, I've tried
Exactly.
to get people to do this and post it, and nobody has. But whatever, it is what it is. But that kind of goes back to the understanding of like aquifers, like how do aquifers work, and how do they not collapse when you pull the water out? And it goes back to the sand and gravel that are suspending the earth above it. Now, there are cases like out here in California where they've pumped so much groundwater out that they've actually dropped the surface of the earth significantly, like 20, 25 feet out here in the
Dang.
valley. It's nuts, right? It's crazy.
Mhm.
So you can fuck shit up, but if you're using this as a system to biomimic nature, then you're not pumping anything out of the bottom. You're just letting it sit down there until the surface of the soil starts to create that tension to draw the water up. So eventually, yeah, the E horizon will go to moist, not loaded, not soaked, but just hold just a little bit of water vapor in there.
Yeah.
And I've had guys that said like, thank you so much. This is the first time I've actually been able to go on vacation. I just fill the E horizon up till it leaks, and then I take off and I come back 3 weeks later and everybody's doing great.
100%. Yeah. That's what I love about it too, man, is that what I actually just kind of modified it a little bit with the I like now with my bigger beds, I like to put a little bit of a slope on it, like 1 inch and 8 foot, not much,
Mhm.
just so that I can get that water to slope to one direction. And then I'll put a little sump pump in that one end. And the only reason I do that is because when the plants are small, when I first flip my bed, sometimes until they can get enough root to start really sucking up that water, my my levels will kind of get a little high on me, and that sump pump lets me kind of pump that back out, back up to the top of the bed, and let it kind of slowly work back down. But other than that, yeah, sand. People think when they hear sand, you automatically think, oh, sand doesn't hold water. But like you said, if you fill that bucket up, you can't pour that water back out. That water is locked into that sand. You know what I mean? And so that's a great analogy right there. Yeah, so that's yeah, that E horizon, man. That's the part I really want people to get, that is really the key to it, I think. And then also when you do set up, and like you said, you could load that E horizon up. I found that I don't want that water to actually go up to the A horizon though. Like I don't want the bottom of the A setting in water because then I feel like I'm getting that wicking up, and then now I can get a little anaerobic action on there. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
definitely.
Hmm.
That's why I explained that you want to set the drain pipe or drain holes or rubber line or whatever you're using at 1/4 inch below that horizon, just to
Hmm.
keep that from happening. And
Yeah.
it's not like the sand is going to dry out. There's plenty of moisture in there. So it's just the excess moisture that you want to prevent from turning that A into a mud bath. So
Yeah. And
I love
I did a small little model of a horizontal, it's just a little 12-inch aquarium.
I saw
And
that.
yeah, so I did that. It's been years ago, man. And then I ended up like kind of just letting it kind of fade out. It was just sitting over here on my shelf and I wasn't adding water to it or nothing. And then so I was like, let me revitalize this thing and kind of use it for something else. And so I dug down in there, and man, Leighton, I hadn't put water in this thing in so many months, but down in the bottom of that sand was still a little moist, and there was still some worms down there. Like, dude, don't forget about me. You know what I mean? And so I cranked that back up, and I was shocked, man. There was still worms able to survive in there that long, and so um, yeah, I think it's a great system, man, and I think I'm like really like both all 10 toes down on it. You know what I mean? I really like that horizontal, man. And then I always tell people the A horizon. um I know you got a specific way you made that, but I kind of simplify it a little bit, and I just say that's your meat and potatoes. That's your soil. Whatever your soil is you've been growing with,
Hmm.
make that your A horizon. And if you want to make it better, then add that sand, silt, and clay in there. You can have that recipe. Anything you add sand, silt, and clay to me, and the soil is going to just improve it. Um, so what's your thoughts kind of on that approach with the A?
Well, the reason I love clay is because it holds nutrient. It has 100 parking spots, for lack of a better word. We call this the CEC, the cation exchange capacity. So those clay platelets have 100 sites around the outside edge that they can hold on to cations, and then 2 sites, the top and the bottom. Think of it as a flying saucer that will hold on to anions. So it's a battery. It literally is a battery. Silt tends to hold on to have a negative charge, so it tends to hold on to the anions instead of the cations. So that's why I included the silt in it as well, so that
Mhm.
we're having a really good battery storage, and a little bit of sand just for the texture. But the reason I incorporated all 3 of those is because of my understanding or deep understanding of biology and how, like on a soil system that has been undisturbed or unpolluted by humans, those microbes are incredibly diverse. And there's microbe groups or families or communities that focus on clay, and some that focus on silt, and some that
Mhm.
focus on sand. So, in order to get the most diversity possible, and you've heard me preaching for years about diversity,
Mhm.
I included those in that mix. And that mix was specifically designed for cannabis growers because I have a little bit more clay than I have silt. Just knowing that they're going to use organic nutrients or amendments, and so you want to store and hold as much of that as possible so that it's right there in the rhizosphere or in the root zone, to support the plant. Because remember, the plant. At the end of the day, the plant's in control, dude. I don't know. Have you been seeing the amount of information coming out on plants have 10 senses? They're
It's
up to,
been crazy.
dude, it's up to 10 senses now. They are more sensory perceptive than we are. We have
Wow.
we have 5, 6 if you believe in ESP. They
Well,
got
what
5.
are the other ones? The plants are what are these new ones?
Chemosensing, they can tell what color shirt you're wearing when you're around them. They can
By the
tell.
light reflecting off of you?
They have our eyes. They
Wow.
literally have the same damn cells as our eyes throughout the plant. Like, so that whole plant is a big eyeball. They
Damn.
they they literally they can smell our fear, our senses, our happiness, our joy. I mean, you remember Brian and I would always talk about, like, don't go
Oh,
into your
yeah.
grow pissed off because you're gonna
No.
upset your plants.
Yeah. That's
And
real
that was
talk.
That was fucking years ago. And the information now that's come out in the last 2, 3 years is just absolutely insane about the level of intelligence they are. And the new joke is like, who's growing who? Who's farming who, man? Because as soon as we kill ourselves off, they're gonna come back way better.
I know it. I was telling that to my wife the other day. I was like, think about it. I said, this plant, we were just talking about our house plants. Like, these plants are making us bring them inside in the cold and making them, keeping them alive. Like, the plants are like, we're working for them. You know what I mean? Like, whether it's their beauty, their smoke, their herb, the medicinal value, the smell, whatever it is that you like about that plant, silly lily, whatever it is you like about that plant's just making you love it even more, making you do. Think about all the cannabis just inside that people are spending money on just to keep alive. Like, plants are not dumb, man. Plants got us working for them, and I think it's pretty ingenious how they do it. And for them to have even more senses, it makes even more sense now. It kind of just reemphasizes. See, we told you got to talk to your plants in a good way. It's just
Right?
more right.
So the other one that I just read, it wasn't a white paper, but it was a scientific study. It was not a joke. Basically, they took a person's house plants from their house and gave them to a friend, and that friend took care of the plants for, I think it was 3 months. This is a significant amount of time. And when they returned the plants back to the original owner, the plants went crazy. They actually perked up, started growing a whole bunch more. So there is a spiritual relationship that occurs between the plants and the humans. Like you
Mhm.
just said, they get us to do these things, whether it's
Yeah.
their color, whether it's their flowers, whether it's what you gain from them. It doesn't matter. Especially plant lovers, right? Because there's a big difference between landscapers and plant lovers. Right?
Hmm.
Landscapers want to fucking nuke it with fertilizer so it grows, so they have to cut more, so they can charge more, so they can make more money. And that's a vicious cycle because they're cutting the plant and not leaving anything behind. So they're essentially mining the soil of all its nutrients over time, and then just pumping it with NPK to keep it alive, which is a downward spiral to say the least.
It's kind of
So
yeah. Go ahead. Don't.
yeah, I was just going to kind of just reiterate that when you're talking about plant lovers, like that particular person that had taken care of those house plants their life, however long they had them before, it just goes to show you that there is you do have a relationship with these plants. And since Pauline's passed, I've kept alive her 5 or 6 house plants. At first I wasn't paying attention to them. Look, I went through some shit when she passed, and
Hmm.
then all of a sudden I woke up one day and I was like, oh my God, I haven't watered these guys in like months, and they were still okay. And so I up potted them into horizontal soil systems, so I didn't have to worry about watering them all the
There you
time.
go.
And they've just been exploding all over the place. I got a vine just ripping right up the bookcase over there.
That's nice, man. I love my plants, man. It's like as you get older, you just dogs, plants. You just gotta, everything just means something. You know what I mean? And it becomes important. But that thing about landscapers, that's kind of a gold bar you said, because really the landscaper is there just to strip the minerals out of your soil so he can sell you more to put back in there. That's pretty slick. Uh,
Dude, that's where I started like 15 years ago. Was hay fields and lawns, and it was like, if I'm going to really have a big impact on preventing phosphate and nitrogen from getting into the water sources and destroying what I love, which is the aquatic world, then I've got to go with who's the biggest polluter, right? And the biggest polluter is Americans with their lawns because they
mhm.
don't take care of them with compost tea instead of fertilizer. And they bag mow, so they're stripping everything off instead of mulch mowing and just leaving all of the grass clippings behind to help the microbes, revitalize the soil. I
Yeah.
mean, if you think about it, dude, if the plant took it's effort and time to mine those nutrients out of the sand, silt, and clay and bring them up to the surface, and then you cut it and leave it, chop and drop, you're fertilizing with what exactly they want. And they're
Yes.
not going to have to work hard because it's easy to break down organic matter, way easier than breaking down sand, silt, clay,
Way
right?
easier. That's why I would tell people JLF, man, plants and bucket of water into microbes. Like
Yep.
before you spend money on fertilizer, why don't you give them something they really can use and they could use it right away?
Yep.
You know?
Oh man, dude. And think about it. If they're not spending all of their energy creating, ATP to create exudates and all of this other stuff through photosynthesis, guess what they're going to give you? More growth, more buds, more fruit,
Sure.
whatever it is you're looking to get. Because they're not wasting all
Mhm.
that energy trying to mine the microbes to mine the materials that they need to send it back up to the plant.
Mm. That's a
So,
bar right there. People don't even realize when they use fertilizer, they can actually be making the plant work harder and give you less of a good result. I
so
saw somebody wrote in the chat, asked Marco about how smoke compares with an horizontal versus like there's no like living soil you can't compare. Like everybody we've ever had on the show, whether they grow in salt or not, they will tell you that living soil you're going to get that better complex terp, more diversity of terps to me, like more layers in your terps. And and the ones that don't say it, I say, well, all right, do you buy organic food or do you buy salt grown food? And they all say, oh, we organic, man, that's better. Well, why the fuck wouldn't you grow your your cannabis organic if you're gonna eat organic? And but I get it. I mean, some people like the ease, I guess, of the bottle, and but that's what I'm here for, man. I saw a guy the other just on Instagram, younger grower, I could tell, but he's got bottles, and now he's throwing out all these stats of I had the pH at here, and I had the ppm at this and this, and he's chasing his tail, you know what I mean? Because he doesn't even know really how to grow yet. And now he's adding not knowing how to grow with trying to manage these bottles and these nutrients. To me, if you are a new grower and you get a good soil recipe, set it up horizontally, you can pretty much go water only. Maybe JLFs if you want to, if you want to bump up. But if you do it right, man, you don't have to buy these fertilizer and the inputs and the things that Leighton, like you just said, are running off into the fucking waterways and stuff.
yeah, and the microbes will tie them up, and the CEC sites will tie them up, and that's why it's so important that you come to realize that if you want to work with nature, you follow her lead. I mean, I've broken the rules. I mean, Elaine, when I first was gearing up to graduate and move on out into the real world, I started playing around with salt fertilizers and biology to see where the threshold was, where I could feed it a little bit without knocking my diversity back too much. And I found a spot. I found a sweet spot where I could be using that blue green shit.
Mm-hmm.
And she got mad at me, and she's like, "Leighton, you can't do that. People are if you tell people that they can use 1 tablespoon to a gallon of water at watering, they're going to go, oh well, if 1 tablespoon's good, I bet a cup's better,
I
right?
agree. Yeah.
The morons, right? Oh, but if
Right.
little's good, put more on, right?
Right.
And she's right because typically humans, think that way. They're smarter. They're smarter than wherever they learned it, right? And so in many ways she was right, and I honored her word, and I didn't promote what I had learned about playing with these synthetics. But over time you are going to knock back diversity. You're
Mhm.
definitely going to knock back diversity. If you had to do a one time bump, okay, that's fine. But if you keep doing it every single time, you're going to eliminate the association that the plant has with those independent microbes and the work they're doing. If the plant never calls them out, because this is how it does it leaks exudates to support specific types of microbes to do specific types of actions or interactions with the sand, silt, and clay to release those specific nutrients that the plant needs at that point in time.
Mhm.
So you start knocking back that diversity because you're feeding it with stuff that basically makes the plant not associate with the microbes. Well, the microbes are eventually going to die off or cyst up, or probably more likely die off.
Mhm.
time, or worse, genetic drift away from each other. Some of the work Kevin Jodrey is doing right now is just fucking amazing. He's talking about how cannabis, the world of cannabis, not just the United States, but the whole world, has diluted the genetic pool to a point that it will probably never come back from it, because there was so much diversity. But the people in Pakistan and Africa, South America, they said, "Oh, you know, California cannabis is the best.
Mm-hmm.
Some seeds from there, and I'm going to blend it with my local variety, make my variety better." Well, yeah, you kind of can, but if you continue to do it, you're blocking out some of the profiles that were what made your cannabis special, dude. And he's right. I mean, and the same thing is true when you're talking about stimulating your plant. Like, that's what I love about Jadam and natural farming. These preps are biological friendly. They're going to encourage biology to continue to evolve as time progresses, and not restrict evolution, which is the biggest problem that we have. Is, I mean, well, look what we've done with the planet, right? Hello, we evolved to a point where we became a not an asset, but a liability in a big way, and that was through these modernized practices of fertilizing and tilling, and all of the industrial scale farming, and food that we create is now junk.
Do you feel like I always say, like, terps, with terps being like such a small organic compound, right? Tiny. I always feel like that on the other end of that, at the root side, the microbes are what's controlling the terps, or allowing them to express fully. Or do you feel that same way?
Some of the work Dr. Ethan Russo is coming out with in the last couple of years is just fucking mind bending. It's not just the terps; it's the flavanols and some of these other less discussed secondary and tertiary compounds that are in orchestra. Like, he loves to use the word entourage, right? The entourage effect. And I think that's evolved into a deeper understanding of, it's not just the entourage. It's just not the cannabinoids, cannabinols, THC, CBD. It's these terpenes. It's these flavanols that are also providing a more of a symphony of music, and not just a large group, a big band. And so I agree with you 100%. And you don't get those expressions in anything other than a biological soil. You can't. There's just no way you can get those kind of secondary, tertiary metabolites that make the cannabis a better medicine. I mean, look, when I first got involved with the cannabis, and don't get me wrong, I grew up smoking weed. I mean, I wanted to say something when you were talking earlier, because we ran out of weed every fucking year. We ran out of weed in January, right? Because you'd get the kind in the fall, and you'd be smoking that shit up. Like, you'd be just, yeah, it's great. All of a sudden, you'd be fucking scraping your resin out of your fucking bowl because you didn't have any, and there weren't nothing coming up. And it wasn't until like late spring, early summer that the brickweed would show up. So we had like 3 or 4 months of friggin' downtime every winter. It sucked, right? And kids complain to me nowadays. I'm like, yeah, fuck you. You have no idea what it was like, man.
Yeah.
When you were done burning the metal, scraping metal out of your fucking bowl.
Scraping bowls out. Yeah, man. It was tough.
Yeah. But anyway, back to the point at hand, is that when I first got involved in, heavily involved in the cannabis industry, is when we started that conference called the Science of Regenerative and Organic Cannabis Cultivation. And I really was waterboarded into the cannabis community on a level that I didn't expect or understand at that time. That's when I first came out with the horizonal soil system, after talking to Joshua Rutherford about, them growing it in pure friggin' super soil. I'm like, oh, dude, ew. I go, I guarantee you, the bottom of that pot goes anaerobic, and the top of that pot, you pour the water on it, runs right off the fucking sides.
100%.
Right. And so I introduced the horizontal soil system, literally got laughed off stage both fucking times. And it
Mm.
wasn't for probably maybe a year, second year that Shango from Shaping Fire interviewed me about the horizontal soil system, that it finally started to get some traction. And
Mhm.
since then, there's been a ton of installations, commercial as well as individuals.
Yeah,
But
people are getting on it for sure. But even now though, even showing like my results, people are still skeptical. Like they it's like you know how it is. Anything you say, well, they say, well, perched water table, you're gonna have a perched water table. Well, I said, well, if you overwater and have water setting up into your, the bottom of your pot, I mean, you never want to do that anyway. So
do you know what the perched water table is? It's actually engineered soil for baseball fields, soccer fields, golf greens. They actually put down a rubber liner to catch the water.
oh, they don't do it with clay, they just go straight liner.
Most
Mm,
of them are, well, the old school were when they originally invented, that was a clay liner. But,
mm,
clay liners can crack, and you've got ground squirrels,
right,
you got
right.
other problems that can occur when you're using a natural source or substance. So they basically created this to be a bottom water, a SIP, right? A
Mm.
SIP system. Sub irrigation.
Planter. That's
Yeah,
it.
planter.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's it.
Um, so that's what a perched water table is. Has nothing to do with the horizontal system. And
Exactly.
that was Tad Hussey, trying to friggin' badmouth something that he never even
Right.
played with. And shame on him. I mean, look, you want to shit on something, well, shit on it after trying it, not before you ever even tried.
Right. That's the problem you get is people want to shit on things and don't even try it or don't even understand it. And then they have no basis to discredit the person who is doing it. So they just make up shit.
Hmm.
So um typical internet, type stuff. But
Yeah,
I'm
but
telling you, man, I
it's like
wouldn't grow horizontal if it wasn't fucking. I like shit easy. That's why I'm Saddam. I like it easy. I don't want to be sitting there. I got a lot of shit to do and to be fucking
right.
around with, cannabis all day. I want my shit to set it, environment set, move on, go do other shit. When I come back and check on it, I expect it to be how I left it. And that's kind of what that horizontal lets you do, man. You don't have to be babysitting this stuff, and you don't have to be a slave to water. I can water. I went to Spanibus last year. I went 2 weeks. All
No.
my fucking beds I didn't water. I did it on purpose because I was believing in the horizontal so much. I was like, I'm gonna fucking leave and I'm gonna water these beds and come back and see what happens. I came back and they were all good. Plants looked amazing. Soils were a little dry on top and stuff, but plants looked amazing. So they were, it worked.
Yeah, they figured it out. They figured it out.
Yeah.
But I guess my point goes back to, in the cannabis community, it was always talked about as medicine. And to
Mhm.
me, I smoked cannabis for the euphoric experience. I have a very creative mind. I'm left brained. So what cannabis did was it allowed me to come up with all of my greatest ideas. Believe me, I've made mistakes too when I'm, inventing things. Well, that's part of the process, but
Right.
it's not a mistake. It's a lesson. So when the cannabis world, I was part of this, deeply entrenched. It was all about, oh, the medicine, the medicine, the medicine. And I had never thought of cannabis as medicine. I've always thought of it as a way to be more creative, be more in touch with my environment, with my beliefs. I mean, let's face it, if you've got good cannabis, you're not locked up on a fucking couch. You're deeply creative. You're
Mhm.
energetic. You want to do shit. You don't want to fucking sleep, right?
Mhm.
So that was really eye opening. And then the deeper I went into the community before it collapsed, the more I realized that they were absolutely right about the fact that it had all these medicinal properties that I didn't understand, and can treat cancer, can create apoptosis in cancer cells. So if you're growing for medicine, why the fuck would you be using synthetics? Why wouldn't you give that plant the chance to show its pure, true genetic potential?
Right.
And I'm with you. It's like it's this frustration that I have with, like, out here. You don't know how many growers I've talked to, and they're like, "Oh no, we know what we're doing." You go into their fucking grows, spider mites fucking everywhere, sickly, unhealthy little plants in little pots, and they're puffing our chests up about how great their smoke is, and I'm like, dude, I took one hit of your shit, it burned the back of my throat, and I threw the joint
Mhm.
the fuck out.
And
That's
you know how it is, Leighton, when you walk into a grow, like, if you got that eye, yeah, you can see shit over there, like,
mhm.
immediately, like, if you can just see it, like, and that's how I am, and, some guys don't even know what they don't know, you know?
That was fucking gold bar.
You don't
I
know, man.
fucking love that saying.
It's
They don't even know that they don't know.
you know? And the other thing, like, I'm always trying to learn and get better, but a lot of cannabis growers, they know it all, man. They got it all, they they got it all down. And those are the ones that I feel like, eventually you plateau. You can it's not hard to grow good cannabis. The hard things are just being consistently doing it the same and getting this consistent results. Those are what gets a little bit harder. And consistently not having pest issues, consistently, having not having certain issues is where it is tough. But to put the plant in the soil and grow it, I mean, most people can make it through that. But do you want to get better? And if you want to get better, I think you got to be open minded, which is one of the natural farming principles. If you can't be open minded to horizontal soil, then damn, to me, you're really missing out, man. Because we're not talking about like anything. It's sand, silk, clay. You know what I mean? We're talking about stuff that's already known to grow plants. So it's nothing that I don't know why people are a little nervous about it, but
I actually had a guy, um, and very, very well known guy, who I was supposed to work with. I was supposed to be the consultant on a project of his in Colorado. And I saw a post that he made about modifying the E Horizon, and he added logs in the E Horizon. And I immediately DM'd him and said, dude, get those logs the fuck out of there. That system's going to fail. It's going to go anaerobic. You're going to have nothing but nightmares. You can't afford to build this twice. There's a lot of work that goes into it, doing it
mhm,
once. And that's the other thing. You never change your soil. So those stupid salt growers that have to throw away their salt poisoned soil at the end of every season, think about how much money they could have fucking saved over a course of a few years.
yeah.
But anyway, he didn't respond to the DM. And then about a year, 9 months later, he sent me a DM back saying the horizontal soil system doesn't work. It's a complete and total failure, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, dude, what the fuck? How does sand, silt, and clay and organic matter fail? We wouldn't be alive if that shit fails,
Right.
right? And so he fucking tore me up, and I finally called him. I said, dude, you talking about that job that I DM'd you not to fucking get those trees the fuck out of the E Horizon? Is this the job that supposedly shows that the horizontal system doesn't work? He's like, whoa, easy. You don't know. You don't have to get all upset. I go, you just fucking attacked me and told me sand, silt, and clay and organic matter fail. Fuck
Mhm,
you, right? And
right.
he and I have not really talked ever since then. He was, he was a dick to say the least. And this is a guy. This is a guy that basically promotes on a very, very high level natural farming. He's a teacher. And one of his most important lessons that he repeats all the fucking time is perfect your understanding of what you're doing before you try to change something, before you try to make it better than
Hmm.
what was
But he
thousands.
didn't do that.
Yeah, and then he turns around and did it, right? And then ripped me a new asshole saying the system shit doesn't work. So
Yeah, yeah,
you're gonna have your haters, right? You got to deal with your
yeah.
fucking haters. But bottom line is, yeah, if you biomimic nature, you build an aquifer, you build a horizon, you build a no horizon, you're gonna fucking knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have issues.
Mark with MI Beneficials had a good way to think about it. I was telling him on that sand layer, I really want that finish out pretty flat, almost like a pool table,
Yep,
nice and
absolutely.
flat. And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Damn, that sounds kind of like a when you're making a espresso. Like when you're packing down that coffee, you want that to be nice and flat. So when you get that percolation, it evenly percolates. It's kind of the
Yep.
same thing." It's funny, people naturally they want to ask, what can I put in the E horizon? And I'm like, don't put anything in that E except for stones, gravels, and graduate up to sand. I said, when you get to your A horizon, now soil, add your logs in there if you want to add some spongy wood and things like that. Add that in your A horizon for long-term breakdown. But definitely leave that E, as it is.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you pound that home because human nature is, oh well, I can make this better, right? Well, you can't make nature better. I'm sorry, you just can't.
It's a good
Otherwise,
point.
none of us would win.
The best thing you can do is get out the way. Let nature do its thing.
Be a steward, not a fucking
Exactly.
hero.
Exactly. And I always use your moron thing, even anytime I'm explaining shit. Don't be a moron. Less is more. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
that now, so going on up, we kind of talked E, then A, and now O horizon, man. What I've noticed, Leighton, is like once you get that E, set, your A is nice, good quality soil bill that you did amended for long-term nutrients. Now, when you put on that O, which is can be a lot of different things. For me, I like rabbit poop bedding. It's kind of my thing. I got rabbits, so I like a nice thick layer of that. But the point I want to make with that E horizon, I'm sorry, your O horizon, your organic layer on top, is that thing will go from 4 inches to nothing in a run. Like the nutrient cycling, there's a lot of that going on there. And I found that that's a good place I can add things like more sand silt clay. Like I can do that rabbit bedding, add a little clay in there, micronized, and I'll put that on top. And as that waters down, that's a way to get those things back into the bed. Is that kind of jive with your
Oh,
line of thinking?
hell yeah. I've had situations where I got called in to clean up a mess exactly like this. They did not put enough sand and clay and silt into their A horizon, and their A was collapsing like your O, like you're talking about. And so I was like, okay, that's not a problem. Just don't create like layers. Just kind of sprinkle some in here, sprinkle some in there, and it will naturally migrate down as the soil as you continue to replace the O horizon. But I mean, if you really think about it in nature, so in the fall you get this wonderful organic droppings, pine needles, leaves, etc., that builds this O horizon up just prior to winter. And if you come back in spring when the snow's all gone and the rains have come in, it's pretty much gone. It's bare
Mhm.
soil again at that point. So that's part of, again, biomimicry, letting nature naturally do the things it normally does anyway, which is to cycle in that carbon back into the soil. Whether it's a dissolved organic matter, in other words, the O broke down to a point that it's fines, and now rain can wash it further down into the profile. But again,
Mhm.
dude, nobody talks about carbon as a fertilizer.
Mm.
It's got to be one of the most important things, and it doesn't fertilize. It creates fertility for the microbes, because if the microbes have access to a lot of what we call organic carbon, so just the carbon molecule, it can take that internally and use it to divide, right? So it's microbe friggin' fertilizer. And
So
and
what's the best way to get that then? That's not like biochar. We're not talking about that, right? You're just talking about organic material, which is all carbon based anyway.
right, so you've done worm castings, right?
Hmm.
So when you take a handful of worm castings, I mean the good stuff, not vermicompost, right? I'm talking about the pure greasy stuff. You take a small handful of that, or a teaspoon of it, whatever, you throw it into water and stir the fuck out of it. It stays chocolate water for quite a period of time. The reason that it does not fall out of suspension is that you've got almost pure organic molecules floating around in the water that create the turbidity.
Mm.
So that is the ultimate way to deliver uh, compost or organic carbon down into your soil profile is to liquefy it. Awesome papers that have been coming out from this woman named Cartufa out of Colorado. She was the first person that first paper I ever came across that really explained dissolved organic matter. Dissolved organic matter is compost extract, right? It's chocolate water. It's just like what happens when you take the verma castings,
Hmm.
compost, and stir them up in water. It stays suspended. It's easily delivered down lower into the profile, and now you're feeding the microbes lower, deeper down into the soil, so that they can, in fact, divide, create more biofilms, create more aggregates. Like
Hmm.
the
And that's micronized, if you want to
well,
look at it
yeah,
that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. It's you've made it so small that it can easily flow down into the soil profile and add a credible value to it. Like she broke this down so deep, Marco. Just you know what? I'll make sure I get you a copy of the paper, and then she just came out with another one that I haven't finished yet. It's even
Okay.
fucking. But that is the only proven way to increase soil fertility long term. So we'll talk about compost, right? You start with ground organic matter, gone. The other end of the spectrum, all the way at the other end, where it's basically silt at this point, it's called mineral associated organic matter. And I actually did a post on this on some older compost that I have at Peach Hill. That's about I think it's just over a year old now. And I have this white, yellow, and slightly pinkish tones to it, crystallized on the organic matter. And that's basically what it is. That what the minerals naturally attach. It's kind of like clay platelets. They attach to the organic matter and they store it there.
Mm.
That is fertility in soil. And the fastest way to make that fertility, that interaction or reaction occur in a soil profile where you can't, you can't physically get to it, is through dissolved organic matter. And she's got all the freaking facts and the scientific data behind this. So when people say, oh, compost extracts don't work, that's because they haven't friggin' tried them, or number
Mhm.
one, or they didn't have something that was micronized or down to an atomic level or molecular level, I should say. Um, so
So
yeah.
do so I have these so I got different isopod bins, right? So
Mhm.
rubber ducky isopods, we all know that. So I got some different isopod bins. Now some of these bins are just like you said, they've been in there so long, they've broken everything. So it's like just sticky mud, like that thick, sticky, but as soon as it hits water, it's gone, it's dispersed.
Yeah.
Should I look at that in a matter of weight and volume? So sure, a teaspoon, right, will brown up my water. But now do I need to look at the weight of that and trying to get pounds of that into my soil via the water? Or am I just
So,
looking at it from that
dude,
small
that's a
level?
great fucking question. That's a great question. So, one of the things I've been working on for the last 2 years is a company called ESS, Ecosphere Sciences. They have a piece of machinery called the muncher that you basically take food waste, green waste, compost, whatever, you throw it in the grinders, grinds it all up, and turns it into this dissolved organic matter. And as part of the project we're doing now, we're trying to really suss out some of the more intricate details about volume versus weight, because it's a nightmare. Because
Mhm.
everything that comes into the compost yard is done by weight, and here we are on the other end dealing with a liquid, so we're doing by volume. And so the guy's like, "Well, no, we need to do this by weight. We need." And I'm like, "All right, look, fine. I'll start weighing it, right?" So I took 1 gallon jug of the muncher juice, which when you look through it is cloudy. You can't see the other side. And I put it on the scale. Well, guess what? It weighed maybe an ounce, maybe half an ounce more than just regular water.
Okay.
So it's a tough one, dude, because once it's in suspension, I mean, you've heard of specific gravity, right? How they weigh um, different atomic elements.
They're so light, you have to have them in something else to be able to weigh.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All
Right.
right. So when it's floating, it doesn't seem to have any weight, or not enough to be calculable. And you would think the opposite. You would think that, well, the more you get, the more turbidity you get in that water, the heavier it would be, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I believed until I did this experiment in the last couple of weeks, and was just like, wait a minute, how how is this fucking working? And then started thinking about back to, physics and thermodynamics, and how once you suspend something, it's like in gravity, right? If we didn't have any gravity, we wouldn't have any weight. So when you take away gravity through suspension in a liquid, you have eliminated its weight. And so bottom line is that, when it comes time to actually sell the Muncher Juice product, we're gonna go by weight or volume or both, because if the person wants to say, oh, well, how many gallons do I need to do this, or what is
Hmm.
or I need to know how much, what the weight of this is that I need to use. Basically, dude, 8.67, whatever the exact
Right.
weight of water is.
Well, that's a great what you just said made me think of something that I want to do now. Now I want to take a gallon of water and start seeing how much of this sticky uh,
How
stuff.
much you get in
Yeah,
there
yeah, how much I can get in a gallon. That's interesting.
before you change the weight, right?
Right, before the weight changes to see like, will this thing hold a pound per gallon, or or four
Right,
ounce, what is it? Okay.
dude. I expect to see a post on that,
I'll have to do that.
and hashtag me so it comes up on my feed.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
But
Will
yeah,
do.
I think what you'll find out is that only when it starts to accumulate on the bottom,
On the
and this
bottom,
is
I
another
was thinking
phenomenon.
about that.
Yeah, this is another phenomenon. It's called aquatic snow. So way back when I first graduated Rodale and I was very proficient with a microscope, I wanted to scope the world. Like I was scoping everything I could find my hands. Like I was down the riverbeds, I was in the streams, I was in the fucking lakes, I was in the ponds. I'm a very aquatic naturalist, but more aquatic focused. And I was horrified, dude, to see that there was almost virtually no life. And the number one key to the successional jump in a healthy aquatic system is what are called rotifers. They're basically or facultative anaerobe or oxygen tolerant anaerobe that lives in aquatic snow. So aquatic snow is where you have that dusty layer, like that's above the mud or above the sand, that's just basically floating there. And you can, when you swim by, you can stir it up. You can see it,
Mhm,
it blows up, right? That's
mhm.
aquatic snow. So aquatic snow is not going to change the measurement, the weight, but when things precipitate out of suspension, that is probably where you're going to begin to see that the weight changes. Now, if you let it sit for a long period of time, eventually a lot of it is going to precipitate out, but a certain percentage of it will stay suspended like aquatic snow. So, you may have to wait weeks, maybe even months for that to finally completely come out to the point where it has started to move the needle or the weight upward to basically to some point in the future. I would have to think that everything would fall out of suspension, and that you would still not have fully gained back the weight that you had added into the water because of the aquatic snow, but you would definitely get some of that weight increase due to the fact that it did completely precipitate out of this liquid. But
And, thinking even further through it, it would also kinda depend on what I built that bin with. Was there sand in there? Was there small particles of non-suspendable, particulates like sand, or, things like that? So,
oh, dude, all right,
interesting.
put on your seatbelt. So way back when, early days, I had a 1,000 gallon uh, called aquaculture system. It wasn't aquaponics. It wasn't connected to plants. It was just purely aquaculture. And this is what I used to capture my fish manure, my fish mold. I created this what's called radial flow filter. So basically, the water got pumped out, drawn out of the bottom through, siphon. What is the term? Gravity.
Hmm.
Like gravity flowed out of the bottom of the tank, and it came up and went into a cone bottom tank where I had
Hmm.
suspended a net, and I had the water go up and into a tube in the very center that drops straight down into the cone. So this is fresh water coming in. It drops straight down into the cone, and that tube that it went into protected the layer of mesh, the bird netting that I had put in the top of the thing. And then on top of the bird nest, or what is netting, which I pushed down a little bit into the water profile, I put a pump on top. So basically, all the suspended solids fell out of suspension down in the bottom half of this tank, and the water got pumped out of the top of this tank. So it had gone through a period of time where it had the chance to precipitate out. And then I had the bird netting was basically like a biofilter. I would have to pull that out and clean it once in a while because the algae and the biology just got so heavy that it got to a point where I would pump the water out and the whole thing would start to sink down because the water couldn't get up fast enough.
Mm.
And that's when I knew, oh shit, it's time to clean my biofilter, for lack of better words. But what happened was that when I would go to empty that cone bottom to collect my goodies, my gold bar,
Goodies, right?
right? I would basically gold pan the bucket and pour off everything at the top, but I would always have a layer of sand at the bottom.
Mm.
And for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. So this one day, I called Dr. Kevin Fitzsimmons down at the University of Arizona, a dear friend of mine, mentor. I said, dude, all I'm giving this fish is feed and water. I've ground up the feed and I put it in water and nothing precipitates out. So I'm not getting sand from them. Where the fuck is the sand coming from? And he's like, Leighton, you idiot. Remineralization. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, fuck, that's what it is. So fish have two stomachs. They have a stomach on the outside, which is why they're slimy when you pick them up. That's biofilm. That's a stomach that pulls minerals out of the water and puts them into the body of the fish. And it also has an internal stomach where it eats and digests internally like any other typical animal. But when all of these biological interactions and reactions are happening, naturally these minerals are broken down to an organic state, a molecular or atomic level state. And of course, birds of a feather flock together, right? So they just start sticking together, and that's what creates that sand. So, really interesting project. Mantra Group just recently did a clean out, and Mo, the man that created it, said, "Hey, Leighton, is there any value in this?" And I was like, "What is it?" He goes, "Well, it's this sand." I'm like, "You made sand?" And he's like, "Well, why would you care if I made sand?" And I'm like, "Oh, dude, that's bioavailable nutrients. So it's fucking the pure nutrient.
So it's ready to go right in the soil, and the soil
Ready,
goes crazy.
it's ready to go. Like the
Huh.
bacteria could just gobble the shit up."
So
And
now, before I know you're in a point, but so will that sand, when that bacteria starts getting to it, will they break it down
yeah,
okay,
they'll consume it like candy.
okay.
It's like baby food, right?
So it's not sand in the sense that if I bit it, it wouldn't bite like sand. It probably is like less hard than
Well,
sand.
it's calcified, so it's
Okay,
hard,
okay.
but it's bioavailable. So in other words,
So it's able to be released right easier.
a lot quicker, a lot easier. And the reason I could verify this was when Mo got me the sand, he gave me a baggie of it. I was like, ooh, this is fucking amazing. And I gave it to the company that we're working for right now, because we're doing a very intensive studies on the relationship of what Muncher can do to compost on a commercial scale. And so we're doing all kinds of chemistry tests, all kinds of biologicals. I'm managing the biologicals. The company that's sponsoring us is managing all the chemistry. So I brought a bag of that to Dave, and I said, dude, please send this off for chemistry analysis. My gut feeling is it's going to be calcium, magnesium, potassium, and perhaps some sodium, and perhaps some other minor cations.
Mhm.
And so he goes, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll send it out to my buddy. You know, he does all kinds of weird tests for me because I'm always exploring different avenues in the formulas I make.
Right.
And so I gave it to him. He sent it off. Crickets chirping. Because normally this guy gets back within 24, 48 hours. So after a week, I hit up Dave. I said, dude, where's the test for that? He goes, you know what? I don't know. Let me reach out. And so he called the guy. Apparently, he didn't get back to him for another couple days, or they played phone tag, whatever it was. So it was about 10 days to 2 weeks before finally got what happened. He had an algae bloom. The algae just completely took over the bag
Oh, wow.
because that's how bioavailable it is.
So was this bag just kind of moist sand?
Yeah, it
Like,
was, dude, it's like wet sand. It was like
yeah.
something you scoop out of the beach, not quite the silly sand,
And
but
algae went crazy in
an
there?
algae just exploded in the bag.
Damn.
And so he didn't test it because he goes, I don't know how to test it. It's got fucking living plants in it or algae in it. I was like, oh damn, he didn't throw it away, did he? He goes, yep, motherfucker.
I'd be curious to know what I know you
Well,
want to know all the profiles in there.
yeah, dude. So I had Mo give me some more of it when he was up last week. And unfortunately, it's too mixed with organic matter. The recrystallization
Food.
kind of recrystalled right on the organic matter. So I didn't get a separate sand and organic matter. It's all just kind of clumped together. So I'm going to make sure he washes out like a gold pan as best
Yeah.
as he can, so that we can pull the suspended solids out, and I can get just the sand out of the machine. So that's going to be a side project I do sometime over the next couple of days while they're here cleaning out. But once I get my hands on that and I've screened it and cleaned it,
Yeah.
then I'm going to send it in for testing again, and I'm going to ask them, hey, look, you got to do this within 24 hours, or otherwise you're going to go right back to the same problem again. I'm never going to get rid of the microbes, like unless I sterilize it, and I
Right.
don't want to sterilize it. That's I could be adding
Right. Right.
problems to it, anyway. So yeah, it's
That could
crazy.
be valuable, man. That could be some valuable stuff,
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. And this is another phenomenon. Like if you've ever made a compost extract, you've seen sand on the bottom of your bucket.
Yeah.
That's the remineralization process.
I figured that was just possibly sands suspended
It got
in the
in there,
water.
right?
But
Yeah.
well, that's something to think about. I'll be watching that a lot more now. So when fish, like aquarium fish, does
Yep.
that sand only build up when there's like high populations of fish, or is it any fish are always making this little sand? It's just whether or not your system can catch it and you can see it.
Well, to be honest, it's the biology that's creating electron sharing capacity. This gets deep into atomic particles, and
Okay.
I don't know how far we want to go down that rabbit hole,
Not
but
too far, just enough to where people can get it.
you brave motherfucker. So what we know about electron donors, electron sharers, and electron um, the ones that pull it, steal it, electron stealers, um, is that we know on an atomic level that all molecules and atoms do have a certain amount of electrons, and some of them have extras, some of them need some. And the reason they need it is either to make something bioavailable or non-bioavailable. So when you get into
Atomic
um,
weight.
yeah, atomic
Mhm.
levels, molecular levels, that these individual atoms want to come together and form molecules. So essentially, we call it biogeochemical interactions and reactions. So there's water chemistry, there's minerals suspended in the water, and then you have biology, related to the fish, or related in the gravel on the bottom of the tank, or just floating in aquatic snow. they're these are all happening constantly and forever, and then they'll never stop. And eventually, that what precipitates out in a mineral form will be reconsumed by other biology, just to keep the whole process rolling on and on and on.
Mm,
So yeah, in my mind, if you did create a system where you could pull these bioavailable crystals, because they're really crystalline, you would have something that was extremely powerful in supporting a very, very heavily biologically dominated soil. And the more heavily dominated it is, it's like you get to the point where you can take your finger or your whole hand and just stuff it down into that soil. That's
right.
that's the good shit. That's where you have so much biology that you can literally take a step on that stuff, pick your foot up, and almost see it come right back up again. Right?
Mhm, spongy.
It's spongy, it's springy, right?
Mhm.
And that's the level of biology you want. How do you get to that? Because that took maybe 100, maybe 1,000 years to get to that level. That's where the only place you'll find that is an undisturbed forest where there has not.
Or indoors in your own indoor beds.
Yeah, yeah, you can create it with super soil, sure, absolutely.
You know,
But
your
you're
living
not
soil's gonna get pretty good. Never be as good as that outdoor forest soil, but
right, but
we're
still,
trying. We're trying.
yeah, no, and you can definitely get there. It's just maybe at the level that we're talking about, you can't create that same level of recrystallization,
Mm,
creating dissolved organic matter, the things that just compound it and make it better and better and better and better over time. But eventually, yeah, you probably will get there. But leading back to the original question about, like, well, how are those crystals being formed? It really goes back to the level of electrons, because this goes back into bonds, right? Covalent bonds, atomic bonds, the different types of bonds that occur between atoms that create molecules. And so it's again, it's a deep topic.
so there's probably a few different things that obviously there's several things that come into play. Something from the fish, something that's already in the water, some biology that's there, and then some minerals that are coming from probably a combination of everything, right?
I got to shut this curtain before the sun goes into my
Go
eyes. Give me
ahead.
1 second. Oh, I should do this before the podcast, but I always forget. Now I'm gonna be looking like I'm in a dark room. Whatever. um, so yeah, this is like the level that is so unexplored at this point in time. Like, as
Yeah.
soon as you say biogeochemical interactions or reactions, you lose most of the people you're talking to,
Yeah.
because they
Because
just
people
can't.
think you're trying to talk over their head, but really we're not. We're just
No.
you've discovered something. Now we're trying to figure out what the fuck it is. Have you asked Keith about that crystallization? Well, he's doing them huge ass systems out there
Oh
in
fuck, we
Massachusetts.
we dove for years down the rabbit hole on that one, and
Okay.
and he's a water chemistry nut job. Like, he's a water farmer. That's what he's been doing for the last 30 plus years of his life, maybe even more.
And I'm still here. I'm just
Oh yeah, no worries. Um, so yeah, it's clear that this is what's occurring. Unfortunately, it's a little over most people's heads as to, like, do you have enough processing power? There you go, quantum biology. But
yeah.
it's even deeper than that, because it's the interactions between the chemistry, the biology, and the minerals, which is we're
It
not the.
almost sounds like because I've memorized your little system with the cone bottom. It almost sounds like now your cone bottom mimicked the bottom of a pond with that, like you
Yeah,
said, right? It almost
yeah,
that was what did it.
yeah, creating aquatic snow, dude.
Hmm.
And that aquatic snow is caked with fucking biology, because it's the perfect environment for the rotifers, for the solubilizing bacteria, for the nitrogen fixing bacteria, all of those guys, because it's the perfect environment. It's got some oxygen in it. It's got somewhere for them to stick and create biofilms and do their work, which is to mine organic nutrients, mine minerals, create more biofilms, create more babies. And this is another thing that like will begin to kind of unlock what I've been talking about is the understanding that the host, the mother, for lack of better words, they're asexual, so they're really not mothers, but the being, the entity that is the bacteria,
Right.
always divides and pushes that new bacteria out around it to protect it. And it just keeps happening over and over and over again. That's how the biofilms expand, right? And that's how they protect the seed, the individual that created that community. On the outside, as the bacteria interact with other bacteria, that's where you get the horizontal gene transfer, biosymbiosis, which is when two different bacteria come together. One bacteria lets the other bacteria into its inner shell, or into between its outer layer and its inner layer. And after they've got their little act together and decide that, hey, this is a cool relationship, then the bacteria will let that bacteria trapped in between its inner and outer shell wall internally into the center, into the mystery, the zone, man. And it converts that bacteria into an oregano. So that's an organ that functions, does a biological function to keep that cell alive.
Damn.
When that new cell divides, that oregano becomes the next nucleus. So this is a whole new fucking species.
So it stays in it. It becomes part of it, and it becomes something new.
Yeah, but the one when that one bacteria divides, it keeps its own nucleus, it keeps its own oreganelos, but it does duplicate some of the oreganelos as well as one of those oreganelos become the nucleus. So it's a new species, dude. It's a fucking new species. This is happening on speeds that we can't comprehend. There are bacteria that live at the bottom of the ocean that divide every million years. Talk about a slow metabolism.
Damn.
But there's bacteria up here that are dividing in nanoseconds because they have a better environment, or the right environment, the right foods, or the right light, or the right water, whatever. But if you think about how quickly that those bacteria are evolving to deal with their environment, you start to say, oh, well, climate change is a problem. No, it ain't. They're going to be fine, man. We're the fucking problem. But the biology on this planet, they're evolving so fast that they can keep up with it. The trees, not so, right? Because as their environment shifts, they either migrate south, or they migrate north, or they become extinct due to the fact that the moisture isn't here, or something has changed in their environment because they don't have the ability to pick up and move, right? There are some plants that can move. We've documented some creepers down in Brazil that literally move 5 centimeters or more a year. So I mean that's movement, but that's not going to keep up with the climate change by any means. And it's not. I'm never going to deny climate change. Did we cause it all? No. Did we cause some of it? Fuck yeah. Oh hell yeah. How could we not, with the amount of fucking impervious soil, or roads, or parking lots, or buildings that we've created?
Right.
They're heat sinks, right? They store the heat, and as that heat releases and goes upward, it pushes the clouds away. So we get less precipitation in these areas where we've created that.
I agree 100%. A question that popped in my head: do we think that if I have a soil, particular growing area of soil, and I'm growing a certain plant, like for instance, Young Sang Cho, he grows peppers, Jadon.
Yep.
Like he says this soil is for Cho's peppers. Like that's all he grows. Do we think that the microbiology follows the plant, or do we, when you grow that plant enough times, now can you get that genetic drift in the microbiology just with that associating with that plant? Because you said now they can flip in a nanosecond, or you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So let me rephrase. Do we think that the biology increases and follows the plant, or does the plant change the biology that's in that soil?
So the plant is evolving, right? Every generation of peppers is going to be a little different than the last one. I mean, the great example of this is the apple tree. As soon as that apple tree creates apples and drops them, and that apple turns or pops a sprout, that plant is different,
Hmm.
significantly different than the parent plant. So this is an evolutionary strategy that all plants have. Some of them are quicker in modifying their genetics. I mean, we've done it. We've steered plants. We've turned
Hmm.
corn, maize into corn, right? And without modifying it on a genetic level, just collecting different plants to grow together to shift the
Right.
genome.
Growing the more yellow one each time,
Right,
or the
right,
fatter one, or whatever
right,
to make. Right.
exactly. So the plant's evolving. The biology is definitely evolving or being steered with the pepper
Because
plant.
it has to,
Right,
right?
exactly, dude.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because the new generation's going to want, oh, I want a little butter on my toast. Fuck your margarine. I don't like your margarine, right? Or I want a little jelly, or I want a little peanut butter on my fucking toast. So I think that it's slower um, in measurable forms as far as like the genetics and the plant itself is modification. So it's less easy to verify or validate. Could it be done? Absolutely, but you'd need a lot of money to do it to prove it.
Right.
But you would definitely notice that genetically there would be a shift in the plant. Genetically, there would be a shift in the microbes. And don't take out of don't forget that we have the greatest melting pot or compost extract machine on the world around us because there's fucking air biomes, dude. There's fucking air biomes. There's fungi spores. There's zooplankton. There's freaking zoospores. There's all kinds of shit. Amoeba, nematodes, flying around in the fucking air.
That we're breathing.
They're getting moved all over the place. I
Right.
mean, greatest study ever. I love this one. NASA did it in 2011, indicating that all of the fertilization for the Brazilian Amazon was coming from sandstorms over in the Sahara. It was going
Mhm.
up across the ocean, back down. Well, later tests, 18, I think it was, they realized, holy fuck, it's not just phosphorus, it's the entire chemistry. Like
The
everything.
entire soil is basically in the air.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
and dropping down in micronized units that can easily penetrate into the rainforest floor or get stuck on a branch or in the bark or whatever, right? So then there was this woman, Mia, who I've been bugging to get onto this podcast, uh, uncovered the fact, and this was in 18, I believe. She studied the wildfires up in NorCal and some of the devastating ones that were happening up in the Emerald Triangle. And she realized that entire microbial communities were coming in on the ash, on the smoke, and even in the embers, dude. Think about it. Fucking burning ember, and there's microbial communities living in that ember.
That's awesome.
Dude, I said years ago, I go, based on everything I've learned, I bet you there's microbes on the sun. It's a fucking crazy comment, right? It's lunatic to think that there could be something living in fire, but she proved that it can. Now, we don't have the ability to get there, let alone test flame,
Right.
right? But who knows? Maybe that's the cosmic dust or biology that helped to seed
That's
Earth,
the common link, is could be the microbiology, you know?
right? So we now know that sandstorms, storms, wildfires are all constant and mass migrations before we wiped out all those fucking mass migrations. We're constantly refertilizing and mixing up the organisms. So the terrestrial organisms would get dragged into the waterways. The aquatic microorganisms would come out on the hair or on the
Mhm.
duck's feet or in the poop that the duck drank the water that ate the plant that was in the water. So you're seeing where I'm going with this.
Mhm.
So the whole system is just a giant regenerative friggin' organism. So back to the question, Well, that pepper plant is getting, you know, constantly bombarded by air and by sun and wind and water, because all of those things carry microbes in one variable form or another. And maybe that's what's helping the plant steer itself, or maybe it's just adding more diversity to the soil for other microbes to consume, or to horizontal gene transfer with, or to biosymbiosis with. So
or
again,
what have you, yeah,
right,
pretty much.
right. So great question, but yeah, that's kind of like biogeochemical interactions and reactions. We're gonna need a few more years to figure those out. Although they got some new chips coming out, dude.
Oh yeah. Well, that leads me to my so horizontal living soil. I wanted to go a step farther, and this thing you see over my shoulder is my reservoir.
Okay.
And it's kind of difficult to probably see, but you see there's a hose here. There's a reservoir made of stainless, and it pumps up from below and into this filter box, and then
Okay.
back out, and kind of cascades into this little island part, and then back down into the bottom of the resi. My whole point was, I was thinking, if I'm going living soil, then I want living water, right? Because just like you just got done saying, and I try to tell people this, if I have my soil and this is X, if I add water from another source, I got X plus whatever is in that water. You know what I mean? So it's just another way to add even more diversity. And I know, just like you do, Leighton, when you look through enough microscope slides, you'll see, damn, this one came from water. Well, this one came from soil. Well, that's the exact same looking thing. You know what I mean? And some of the microbes share. And I feel like, with the reservoir, now, taking what you said even further with the formation of crystals, I feel like, man, I mean, you just kind of open my brain up even more. But I like the reservoir because I feel like I got now the all the terrestrial microbes in the soil, and now with the addition of the reservoir, which has river stones, some fish, some snails, things like that, and along with all the stones, now kind of getting a blend. So I'm getting a little boost of microorganisms, a little more diversity. You
Yeah, that was the foundation of my work, was basically taking fish shit down to Rodale and saying, Elaine, I put this on plants, they explode, but I don't know why. Can you explain it to me? And believe me, we had she and I are dear good friends, but we had some heated conversations in the day. She was very blunt, and very stubborn on her teachings and her understandings of things. And the reason why was she was persecuted when she first started bringing out the understanding of the soil food web to the college world. The ivory tower tried to burn her at the cross numerous times. And so when I would make a statement like, well, there's no difference between terrestrial and aquatic biology, she'd get pissed at me. And I'd be like, Elaine, you saw that testate amoeba in the fish mold, in the fish poop, and you saw that testate amoeba in the soil.
know.
They look the same. They have the same color. They function similar. So why can't you state, or why can't I state,
Hmm.
that there's very little difference between the aquatic and the terrestrial organisms? And I forget her answer at the time, but it was more or less, it wasn't a word salad, but it was like, just be careful, Leighton. You could destroy your reputation when you start making wild accusations like that.
Well,
And
you just making an observation more, right? You didn't write a paper on it.
well, and that was the blessing, was that I don't have any letters behind me. So I don't care who attacks me. I don't
Boom.
have a reputation that I have to worry about. The only reputation I have to worry about is showing up, doing a good job, and making things look better when I leave. If I do
Mm.
that, I get a check, everybody's happy, on to the next project. But
Reputation and ego kind of go hand in hand sometimes. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
unfortunately, dude, unfortunately. And that's always been probably my greatest weakness, is that I don't have a big ego. I more want to help you than I want to take advantage of you or manipulate you. And
Thank you.
trust me, it's been a challenge. You don't know how many times I got fucked in life because I wasn't, the aggressor. And
Right.
so typically narcissists and manipulators and aggressors, they go after guys like me because we're generous and we're open and we're trusting. We're trusting
Mm,
to a fucking fault. So,
that's a dope
lesson
bar.
learned. But that lack of ego has always made me a great student because I want to know more. I want to understand what I don't understand.
Thank you. Me too. That's why I'm here. I'm here to meet to chop it up with you, but I'm also here to pick your brain, buddy. You know what I mean?
Dude, my pleasure. My pleasure.
I
And
love it.
and and hopefully, like, I haven't been paying attention to the comments as much because I'm really enjoying the conversation. But
Yeah.
typically, I think people learn from conversations like this when we're just chopping it up. We're being two guys talking about some
Yeah.
crazy shit that we understand and that we both want to know more about.
I think a lot of times too, man, like people, I put a lot of weight on an experiment. Like if you tell me you did this and I trust you as a man, I say, I think he did that." I put a lot of weight on an experiment where a lot of Instagram, you'll do the experiment and show the results, and then not Instagram, internet in general, and then it's like, but well, the experiment should hold weight more than your opinion of what the result should have been, so that to me, that goes to the open-minded man, keeping an open mind. And just like you, man, I want to learn every day. You know what I mean? If I can learn more, a little bit more of what I'm doing, I get a little better. And that's all it is. And I get to share a little more with folks. For some reason, you do a show like this show. I don't make any money from doing any shows. I sell a few inputs, make a few dollars for my garden, but I'm a self-made man outside of Instagram. So I'm not relying on anything, here to do that. But for some reason, people have a natural tendency to think you're trying to get over on them, or there's something you're trying to sell. And I'm not trying to sell anything. I want you to feel what I feel. You can grow fucking excellent cannabis for a very low cost, focusing on microbes, and that's all I'm here trying to do.
No, you're a good soul, buddy. You're a good soul, and I think that I felt that the very first time we had you on Brian and my podcast. It was like, oh
Yeah,
man, this guy's fucking real. He's not full of shit. He's not here
that's
to.
how I felt. Felt the same way about you guys. Like, man, all right, this guy, he knows his shit. I love this.
Well, I'm a good student, dude. That's all. I'm just a really good student, and I'm always chasing the knowledge as it comes out because let's face it, it's the most scary, horrifying time I've ever lived. I'm 61, so I've been around the fucking block for a minute. And the lack of freedoms, the money, the geopolitics, the wars, all of this insanity going on around us. But it's the most incredible fucking time for knowledge to come out. The
Yes.
ivory towers have cracked. The shit that they used to keep from the general population are now entering into the internet. They're entering into mainstream. People are starting to get access to this information and testing methodologies that we could never have access to unless
Mhm.
we were the PhD in that lab studying it or writing the papers or whatever. So God, to be alive right now and curious, I
No.
no, dude, I could just like stay awake all day, every day for the rest of my life trying to keep up with the shit that's coming out.
Yeah, there's so much info out there now and knowledge and things to read. It's almost like too much. It's like,
It's
damn,
overwhelming.
let me just go back into my little garden here and focus on that because I know that works.
Dude,
Yeah,
that's why I go to the compost pile every morning. It's just like, oh guys, what's up, baby?
exactly. Exactly.
So I hear you. So typically at 1:30 or hour and 30 minutes, we do questions, and we actually have quite a few for you today. So Ken,
Okay,
you want
cool.
to hop on and let's get into it.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, we got all kinds of different questions.
Mhm.
We'll start with this one. I'd love to hear Marco talk about the organic matter ratio in the A horizon.
Okay, well that's a good question. That's a good question. In my a I think I'm a lot more organic matter than Leighton. like I said, my A is simply my Coots mix soil, which is a third 3 part. For instance, it may be rice hulls, it may be peat, it may be IMO that I make. Those are the three, and then amended with amendments and rock dust for long-term nutrients. So my organic material, if I had to estimate in my A, I may have, man, 50, more than 50%, organic material. If I really break it down. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that because I don't do soil tests. I'm more of a grower that grows from just kind of observational and just overall just been doing it a long time and kind of can see what I need to do for me. But that's a great question. I probably should send a soil test off. I've gotten, like I said, I got 6 different beds. My oldest one was built around 2016, 2014. And I've never had anything tested, so that's just
But
me.
but you're constantly adding in as it
I'm
gets.
always, yeah, adding to that old horizon, adding in those micronized clays. I got this thing. I like to get clays from all over the world. So I'll get like Rasoul clay, French green clay. Um, there's different like black clay from the different like different clays. My wife turned me on to because she gets them for her cosmetics side of her business, and they're all high grade clays. And I was like, well, shit, man, this stuff looks good, and I started snagging them for me. But yeah, I add a lot of clays back into my soil for that CEC that we talked about, and then also some sand as well. But yeah, I'm not the best as far as knowing ratios and then testing of soil. I'm not up on that as much.
Dude, I was thinking like you're putting makeup on your overall.
It's crazy because it's all like food grade and it's micronized, so it's
I
like
know.
so nice, man. It's
It's
really nice.
nuts. It's
Yeah, it
fucking
is.
nuts. That's awesome. I love that. That's a great plan.
And he only gets smacked every once in a while, I'm sure.
You took my play again?
Well, I know. I see. She had a couple, right? She had like 2 types, and then I went and found like all these other ones that are like from different regions. So now she's like, "Oh, what's that?" I said, "Oh, this is French green. You don't know about that, So
Oh,
that's
so
pretty.
she's stealing from you now.
Yeah, now she's looking back in my bin. Exactly.
Funny how what is yours is hers, and what is hers is hers, right?
Yeah, that's very neat how that works.
So, Leighton, what would you say for that question on organic material?
No, I think he's spot on. I mean, basically, it's kind of, you could say, well, it's 100% organic matter, but it really isn't, because organic matter is a catch-all phrase for lignin, cellulose, cellular, all those different components, and that's why it breaks down and dissipates and disappears over time. And that's why he's constantly adding more organic matter, because it's being consumed and mineralized. So it's hard to say, but yeah, I would stand behind that. It's probably 50% organic matter, 50% mineral.
Okay. Then we'll run on to the next question here. When do you know it's time to water the horizonal grow?
Good question. Good question. I look at my O horizon, so I'll use that and I'll grab a little piece and flip it up, right? So if within my O horizon it's still moist and I see springtails and I see the worms up that high, then I don't have to water. But when I see that kind of getting a little drier, I'll go ahead and water. Um, Sometimes I water every day just because it might not be a lot, but just enough to moisten that whole top O layer, let it get nice and moist, and then just let that be a moisture cap for the whole soil to kind of just keep everything moist. Um, I'm not on a routine. Like I said, I can go up to 2 weeks without watering, but I've also found that with the horizontal, a big bed in general, you can get dry spots. You can get dry pockets. I had a 2 by 4 foot horizontal bed. The plant farthest away from me kept it wilted. One plant wilted back there. I'm like, what the fuck? Do I got like fusarium? Like, what is going on here? So it wilted and like died. And so okay, chopped it down, grew out the rest of the bed. replanted, the next plant did the same thing in the same spot. So then I said, well, let me see what's going on. So I actually dug down, and actually the half of the bed was like gray. You know how it gets grayed out and it gets like hydrophobic when you make like IMO and stuff? It was all grayed out, so no water was setting in that half of the bed. And I attributed that to not watering evenly often enough. You know what I mean? You don't want to get it to where if it gets a little dry pocket, now that can get hydrophobic, and now that can grow on you before you know it's a little bigger. It's a little bigger. You thinking you're watering, but you're not. So I try to water a little bit more consistently, keep everything nice and moist.
Well, that's again why the A horizon is valuable, because it does. As soon as that top starts to go hydrophobic, that wicking starts, and the A is the heart and the lungs that's pulling that moisture up and maintaining an even layer in the O. And again, the O, each one of these is mathematically one part, 1/7, 2/7, 4/7 for that very reason, because the deeper the organic matter is, the harder it is to maintain an even moisture throughout it. And this is a prime example why. And I'd say, if you find a hot spot, Marco, and you dig it up, throw a handful of clay and silt and sand, and mix it with your organic matter, and now that pocket is never going to have an issue again.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, Leighton, because this particular soil I did a lot of leaf mold. And my coots kind of third. I think 1/3 of it was like old leaf mold, and I attribute that to it is because it didn't have quite enough of that cation exchange in there, and that opened me up. I feel like, so. Yeah, you're right. And what I did was I pretty much scratched off of like about 4 inches of that A, kind of hollowed out that pocket, and then kind of just re-scraped in some fresh Ace Horizon soil, and I hadn't had no issues since.
Damn, there you go.
But I like to experiment with my soils. I was like, oh man, there's some nice leaf mold, and it made sense. But one thing could give you an issue somewhere else when you're experimenting, and that's what it's all about.
Hey, live and learn, dude. Live and
That's
learn.
right.
Are you top watering or bottom watering, Marco?
Top water, yes sir. Top,
It
because
automatically bottom waters.
yeah,
Because
and it'll
Yeah.
pull up if you over, like, if stuff gets out in your pan, it's gonna pull right back up. Um, and yeah, so only time it doesn't do that is when plants are super small and they're not really helping the situation. They're not pulling up any moisture. Sometimes it gets a little bit, stays a little wet, and that's why I did that pump deal, so I could just pump that back up and for those couple weeks until the roots get established.
which I think is a great idea.
Yeah. So we'll go on to our next question from Lucas. I wonder if stuff like sulfates, potassium, Epsom salts, gypsum, which is considered organic, each run indoor in big pots or beds or even outdoors, and what Marco and Leighton think.
I'll let you start with that one, lady.
Well, there's a lot of different forms of potassium. There's a lot of different forms of sulfur or sulfates, and Epsom salt is a combination. Gypsum is a combination. Yeah, they're mined for some. For some of these, they are definitely mined out of the earth. Do they have salt in them? Yeah, some of them do have salts, and some of them are considered in the organic realm or regenerative realm as to be a synthetic input, although they are mined, right? And it's the same thing with like perlite, right? I think it's pearl. Which are the two ones? Perlite and vermiculite.
Vermiculite, yeah.
Perlite is mined, right? But it when you put it in soil, it floats to the surface, so it doesn't really provide the aeration that it was used to create, which was a lightweight potting soil for the container industry. So again, everything in moderation is fine. One thing about gypsum is you can turn your soil into a shit show in a heartbeat if you use too much gypsum. And potassium is it potassium silicate? Again, it's too broad of a question, but be educated. Educate yourself as to what it is, and low and slow is always the best.
Give us a little bit more on the gypsum, man. Like, how does that overdoing that? What is it actually doing in the
So it
soil?
hardens the soil. It turns it into a crust. Like
So you're almost turning it, getting a sheetrock.
yeah, exactly, dude. It compacts.
That's what it is.
Yep.
So
So there's a guy that I've been working with who was just like gypsum, gypsum, gypsum. I'm like, dude, you're gonna have a fucking problem. You keep doing that. Gypsum is a one-time add only. You don't need to add. Well, it softens the soil. It softens. I go, yeah, it does soften a compacted clay. But if you keep adding it, you're gonna turn it into fucking wallboard. And guess what happened? Right. And now it's like, well, what do I do now? Like, I told you not to keep doing that. Were you going to dig the whole fucking acreage up and start over? You can't afford to do that. I have no idea how to get rid of excess gypsum in your soil. Like, use more compost extracts. You know, that's what I'd recommend to you. Is you probably the only chance you got is to break it up into its original two components, and have those be mined and used up by the bacteria, and then eventually taken up by the plants. That's a long-term remediation.
And he was talking about, is it going to kill the biology?
No, it won't kill the biology. Yes, it will kill the biology, because when the soil compacts, guess what? You kill the biology.
No longer breathe.
It can't breathe. It's gone anaerobic. And so, yeah, the consequences are long-term, very detrimental for both the biology as well as any plant life, because now your plants can't grow in an anaerobic environment.
And you're stopping water penetration, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you lost all that, dude. Now you're dealing with runoff every storm. You got a watershed. Nothing can get established very well. So yeah, gypsum is one of those things. It's one-time use to adjust overall soil chemistry. Never touch it again. All about the biology.
Well, that's a good gold bar there.
Yep, big time. So we're going to our next question. Marco, was it that horizontal bed, or was it that horizontal bed the one that you used to win Grandmaster?
The not Grandmaster, the Grand Champ with my Divine Pine. Yes, that was it was a horizontal soil. It was in the 3x3 one that's on my YouTube. It was that soil. Yeah, and that's
cool.
And that just re-emphasized it once again when I grew that Divine Pine, and I knew it was a special plant, and she won. I was like, there you go. But then guess what? The next year, Athena got into that competition, and now all of a sudden Athena's winning. So competition, whatever, you know
who
how
pays the most
are. Right, exactly.
So the next question is, there a measurable frequency you can get when things are in suspension still before fallout?
Must be we're talking about water.
Well, in your mix, I remember when you were doing the glyphosate thing, you used a specific vibration or frequency when you were stripping out the biology. So I think that may be the direction of the question.
So, yeah, frequency, vibration. Oh, that's another goddamn rabbit hole. So in the experiment I did with the glyphosate, I took a fully grown grass plant with the root ball intact and soil. We call it a rhizo sheath. So it's all soil and roots bound up together in one giant aggregate. And I suspended in a bucket of water. And then I used my concrete vibrator, which I have a variable frequency drive for. And I would turn it up and down till I got the vibration that I knew was just dropping all of the material away from the roots. This is something that I learned in years of making my compost extracts or my compost solids, is that you find that spot, man, and it varies. It's not always the same frequency. But you keep spinning it up and down until all of a sudden you just see the water just fall out of the liquids or fall off the solids. I can't explain it. It's again, it's not something I've measured. I'm at default like Marco for not doing soil tests as far as what frequency that was, what musical note did it. But bottom line is, I can tell you this, it's different on every material. Might be just slightly different, but it's always different. I've never, maybe I have hit the same spot more than one time without knowing it. But more often than not, even as the volume of liquid changes to solids as the liquids fall out, I'm still fucking playing with that dial.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't be more specific.
No, that makes sense though.
Well, it's like when Tesla put on the generator onto the steel beam and almost shook the building down when he found the resonant frequency. It's the same basic idea.
Mm-hmm. Gotta find it. I like how you found it, like, and you rechecked on the fall too to see if you could get any more stimulation. I guess, Leighton, is that kind of why you did that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, as the liquid separates from the solid, the vibration needed to continue to separate the liquids, the less there are, the vibration tends to go higher. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Dirt Ride, do nanoclays hang out like aquatic snow in a cloud? How would you know the difference, and what identifies nanoclay?
Oh, that's a great fucking question. So I don't know. It's been a minute since I revisited this paper, but there was a big push in Egypt on the floodplains. So the floodplains in Egypt are some of the most fertile floodplains in the world. The Nile feeds them, floods, feeds them, dissipates, and then they grow their plants. Well, all of a sudden, the plants weren't coming up as good or yielding as high. And so all the farmers complained, and the Ministry of, I forget the organization, they
Agriculture?
they started studying the Nile water to see if it was pollutants or, what has changed? Why is this not as fertile as it used to be? Well, they chased it all the way back up to, I think it's Sudan is their border and shares the Nile. I'm not positive. Don't quote me, but whoever they share the Nile with had built a dam for hydropower. And at the beginning, the dam wasn't causing as much problems, but the older the dam got, it seemed to have built up the nanoclay on the bottom as a silt, and that was attracting more nanoclay falling out of suspension through magnetism. And so now down lower in Egypt, they were not getting the nanoclay that they were getting every year. So that nanoclay is an incredibly powerful fertilizer or storage unit for nutrients and long-term release for the Egyptians in their fields during the year. So nanoclay is incredibly powerful and valuable. And I don't know if I completely answered the question. Can you throw it back up for a second?
Are those just your finely suspended clays that really never precipitate out?
Yeah, and they take forever. I've had guys shake up jars doing, the soil textural tests, and have come back to me 4 days later and said, Leighton, it's still cloudy. I go, oh, dude, you got some good shit. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I go, you got fucking nanoclay. Look at the color of the water. It's like this. It's not dark. It's not like chocolate water. It's more like yellowy, whitey, cloudy. And eventually, I don't remember how long it took to settle out, but he finally did get a very small, thin layer of like chalk kind of looking substance on the surface of the jar.
I wonder if the nanoclay would be the first part of putting the grains of sand together that you're talking about.
Well, the grains is the crystals.
The crystals.
Let's call them crystals because they really are crystals. They're not formed through pressure and heat like sand is. Well, sand can be two parts. It could be coral reefs, old coral reefs. So that's not hand. That's biogeochemical. But typically we look at like quartz-based sands. They're formed through heat and pressure. These are formed through electron exchange and donation. So, but bottom line is that the clay itself stays suspended for a long time. It does have the cation exchange capacity. They prove that based on the fact that as the clay built up behind the dam, the less and less clay came in with the water. So it actually magnetically pulled that nanoclay out of suspension. And
Mhm.
that's what caused the lack of fertility in Egypt.
Did they since probably like do a flush or something? Let's flush the you gotta flush the nanos back out to Egypt
You
or
know, I don't know what they did to resolve that, but
right.
they must have done something. Like, yeah, they could literally put a mud sucker in there and just turbulate so that
Mhm.
the nanoclay was now back broken the bond with the other ones,
Keep it
and
suspended.
right, kept it
Yeah.
suspended so that they got it. But I'm sure they did something. I mean, you don't fuck with a country like Egypt and not things don't go well, especially if you're a poor country that's up the river. You know,
I got another question about the crystals, Lee. Had y'all looked at them under a scope, and are they like all distinct in shape and facets, or are they
yes,
just random?
yeah, I have looked at them. They're jagged. They come in different colors, different shapes.
Okay.
They're really cool to look at. I mean, it's kind of like looking at like almost a stained glass window. Not exactly, because there's not as many colors and they're not as vibrant, but you can definitely see like ambers and light pinks and sometimes a little taupey, sometimes crystal clear.
Is it
So
like looking at diatoms where you get a little bit of obviously not shaped that way, but you get that variety of color and thing in it?
yeah, I would say yes. And generally speaking, though, like there's not the full palette. Like there's only like 4 or 5 different colors that you'll see, and again, they're not vivid. I mean, probably the darkest one is like the taupey tanny color one. I think that's the calcium crystal, but I'm not positive. And
Right.
again, you know what? When I get this new stuff and I get it off and I get it tested, I should be able to associate the colors of it with a mineral nutrient.
That'd be cool. I'll be looking
Yeah.
forward to that. Do a post, like you say. Do a
All right.
paper, do
All right.
something.
All right, so there's the question again, Leighton. Do you think you covered it all?
Uh, how would we know the difference? Do nanoclays hang out in the aquatic snow? Yes, they definitely hang out in the aquatic snow because they take forever to fall out of suspension. So
Okay, then we'll go on to our next question here. A bit off topic, but what about centipedes in the soil beds? Are they
Mm,
beneficial, or is it a problem that they are eating worms and other arthropods?
I like them. I like my soil centipedes. Obviously, listen, think about it like this. When I do a living soil, I want obviously we're not going to have moles and things like that in our indoor living soils, but I want each member of the soil food well. I want to see worms, I want to see isopods, I want to see uh, millipedes, and then things that eat those is a centipede. Like if I see 100 isopods, I don't want to see 100 centipedes. You know what I mean? I should see one or two of those centipedes in a bed. And they get big and they're fast and they're very good predators. So um, I like them. Don't touch them because the centipedes will bite. But in the soil, they're good,
they're a T-Rex. They're a super predator.
right?
It shows you have a well-balanced ecosystem.
Exactly.
As long as they don't get out of balance, then they're a good thing to have.
Yep.
Remember, predator prey. You need enough prey for the predator and vice versa.
Key.
So then our next question, if not gypsum, what do you recommend to amend calcium?
So typically in big ag, we have 2 forms, dolomitic and calcitic. I think the calcitic lime you can't use during high heat and temperatures. So if your soil's bare, you go out there and put it on it, it turns things into a shit show. So that's when you have to use dolomitic, and dolomitic does not have as high a calcium value as the calcitic. Right now, there's a bunch of new friggin' amino acid digest forms from calcium. It's blown up the organic chemistry industry as far as ag is concerned. There's a number of them out there. There's Calmino from BioAg. There's Hortical from a company I think out of Mexico. I've used these. They're a great source. They're really fast action. But if you're looking for a long-term, if you're building a horizontal soil system and your calcium is down in the 30 or 40s, I'm dealing with this with a guy literally right now. We went ahead and added a certain amount of gypsum to his soil. He was not super high in sulfur. I mean, not that sulfur is a big deal, but you just don't want to make it astronomical. So I went ahead and he had the material already. So I said, yeah, go ahead and add the gypsum. Let's get your calcium level to, in the 70s, which he did. And then what we'll do is we'll adjust pH. We'll add full power to knock the pH back down to range when it comes time to actually, install the O horizon. But yeah, he used gypsum to amend the A horizon as necessary. But again, that's a one-time shot, man. It's not something that you do once and then you forget about it.
And Marco knows the best way to do it. Something about eggshells, right, Marco?
Oh yeah, the green natural.
Yeah, eggshells are okay. I mean, I'm not a eggshell. I'm not. Well, listen. I was told once before that, some of this calcium solutions that in natural farming are not micronized calcium. They're just dissolved calcium. I don't know if that makes a big difference, but I'm not a big eggshell guy. I use them. Like if I get them, they go right out in my compost. They go in my soils. Like if you look at anything, it's always going to be pieces of eggshells. But I don't lean heavy on them, Ken, because I don't know. I'm not 100% on them.
And see, I always use the WCA. So using the biology to pull the calcium out of the eggshell.
Now, there you go, WCA.
Doing a soil,
there you go. Okay. Yeah. With
soil
the
soaker foliar. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And hey, I'm sure there's calcium in there. And if nothing else, it takes it to a micronized level where it's small enough because, it just dries to dust, right? So it should be small enough to where it gets used in the soil or your body. So.
And then our last one is actually a statement. Marco, please come on this podcast again. We've only just scratched the surface of what you and Leighton can talk about. Thanks for sharing your knowledge.
Oh, thank you. I'll tell you, I was here on a learning mission. And I think that everybody in the chat and people watching this later on are going to benefit from it. So I love talking to people that are smarter than me, man. Go through life and look for areas where people are smarter than you, because then I can ask Leighton my questions, those ones that are in the back of your head. You're like, man, who can I ask that? I can't ask anybody. I can't Google that, right? I got to ask somebody with experience. So look for those people. So that's why I appreciate you, Leighton, and I'm glad I got to be on here, man. So
hey, the pleasure's mine. And again, I'm not a real smart guy. I pay attention. I experiment. I've got a tremendous amount of experience. I too surrounded myself with the smartest people I possibly could on this journey to understand it. Dr. Kevin Fitzsimmons, Dr. Ricosi, Dr. Elaine Ingham, just to name a few of the superstars that I was so blessed to have the opportunity to work with. And again, use them and ask them questions. And, this is something the audience really needs to know is like, if you find somebody that knows more, has more experience with something than you do, if you're asking them really intelligent questions, they open up like a floodgate, man. They want to teach you. They want to share what they know. And so if you shut up and be the best listener, ask that question, shut the fuck up. Don't say another word. Just let them spool. And you'll just be like, oh my God, I just learned way more than I could possibly imagine. If I kept interrupting them with, oh, well, what did you mean by that? Oh, what is it? Can you explain that more? No, just shut the fuck up. Shut up. Be the best listener, and you will learn an incredible amount of information. And they'll probably get into their personal lives with you too. So if you really want to learn, be the best listener. Ask really fucking good questions, but then shut up and listen.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen many voices and choose the ones that resonate with you and keep listening.
Amen.
Yeah. I like this. This was fun. This is good stuff.
Yeah. You'll definitely have to come on back, brother. This was fun. And I'm sure the audience is going to enjoy this.
And this was just winging it, you know. We were just kind
Yeah.
of freestyling it, and just this is where we went. So if we,
Yep.
yeah, and we
Yeah.
could probably pick a topic, and we still end up freestyling and winging it. So whatever, it's all good.
The conversation just goes.
Right.
All right, well, go ahead and I guess wrap it up. Ken, as always, thank you so much for all the time and energy you put in behind the scenes to make this happen every week. Marco, thank you so much for coming on and giving us 2+ hours of your time. And you know, it's an honor to answer any question I can for you. So hopefully it was worthy of your time.
Yes, yes, yes. It's a yes. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
And I really appreciate your coming on and sharing, Marco. You've got a much of a brilliant mind as Leighton does, and you always give, you know, so much of yourself, and we really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, Ken. Yeah, just keep getting that experience out there, people. That's all you gotta do.
So for the channel guys, Wednesday, of course, Andy and I are going to be on again. We are taking Christmas Day off because that's the Wednesday after. We have Mr. Villa coming back on with Leighton on Monday, and we're going to actually get more into the actually Bokashi side of the conversation we didn't get to last time. So you're going to want to check that out for next Monday, guys. So everybody, take care.